All right. So last we left off, we were talking about Hoover's approach to the Great Depression. Hoover's approach is going to be the Republican approach, a very conservative, laissez faire, let the economy fix itself. We don't need to get involved in social problems. No progressive government here approach. And that idea, that stance on the Great Depression, mixed with the response to the bonus army, which was tear gassing World War I veterans off the lawn of the White House, is going to get Hoover to lose the re election in 1932, giving us FDR. Now, FDR is going to come into the presidency with a very unique background. FDR had been diagnosed with polio in 1921, which is during a time where there was no treatment for polio. He also is going to be the fifth cousin of Teddy Roosevelt, so a distant cousin of a president that we had in the past. He marries a niece of Teddy Roosevelt, Eleanor Roosevelt, which say what you might. But this power couple is going to come into the presidency in 1932 after his time as New York governor. Now, this is going to be important. FDR is known as a reformer, as he illustrated when he was governor of New York. What he did was pass the Temporary Emergency Relief Administration, which was aimed to find jobs for the unemployed. He's going to be governor during the stock market crash in the business capital of the United States, one of the major cities. And that's going to be huge. People look to how he handled New York during the beginning of the Great Depression and then say, okay, if he could do that for New York, he could do that for the whole nation. FDR is going to believe the exact opposite of Hoover, that the government should play an active role in the recovery of the nation. And he's going to use the new form of entertainment to his advantage. His inauguration is going to be broadcasted across the radio, which means that people were sitting in their homes listening to their president speak directly to them during a time where people really didn't have the money to travel, where people couldn't go and see it for themselves. He was still reaching into their homes and speaking about how the United States would survive the Depression, what he would do. He's going to take the approach of trial and error to combating the Depression. FDR realized that we had never experienced something like what we were going through before. So his idea is to try something. And if it fails, admit it frankly, try another. But above all, try something. We can't just sit and wait for it to solve itself, because that isn't going to work. So FDR comes up with the New Deal. And the way that he's able to put together this New Deal for the American people is he has a very diverse group of advisors in his cabinet. He's going to mishmash together Republicans and Democrats. He's going to nominate Frances Perkins, the Secretary of Labor, the first woman in the cabinet, so that he could get the most diverse response to a problem that we had never faced before. Let's put all sorts of different eyes and ears in the room and see what we can come up with, because everybody needs to be heard, regardless of political party, regardless of gender, regardless of background. Let's go ahead and see what we can come up with. And he's going to have Eleanor Roosevelt, who redefines the role of the First Lady and really becomes the First Lady that takes an active role in the political scene. She's going to interact with people and even go so far as to advise her husband, serving as his eyes and ears in the public. So she's going to bring the people's perspective to her husband as well. Now, I say this, and I say that you can challenge me on it. In the first 100 days, FDR does what no other president has ever done. Okay? The reason that we measure the first 100 days of the presidency is because of FDR. He is going to pass 15 bills that focus on relief, recovery, reform, the 3 R's of the New Deal package. Okay, he does more in his first 100 days than any other president can say that they have, because of the situation that he was in, the number of executive orders that he signs, the number of bills that he shoves through Congress is going to create a measuring stick for every presidency that comes after him. That's why we focus on the first 100 days of the presidency, because of what FDR did. FDR focuses on relief, recovery, reform. What he wanted to do was provide immediate relief for the current problem. He wanted to get us to recover from this depression, and he wanted to implement reform that would make sure that we had a long-term plan to never get involved in a Great Depression again. And he does. So let's look at the part of relief, the first of the 3 R's in the New Deal package. So the very first problem that FDR says he has to fix is the banks. Okay, the banks were doing some sketchy stuff. The banks were not reliable, and he says, okay, this has to be fixed. And what he does immediately is pass the bank holiday, also known as the Emergency Banking Relief Act. The bank holiday was meant to go after the number one crisis, which was bank failures. The unregulated bank practices during the 1920s would cause customers to panic. Like I told you, if customers had even an inkling that the banks were not doing well, they would immediately rush there and pull all of their money out of the bank. And when the bank ran out of money, they would have to close their doors. And that meant that if you didn't make it to that bank, you lost all of your savings and the bank would fail. In 1929, 659 banks closed. By 1932, 5,102 banks are going to close their doors, leaving customers without their life savings. So FDR says, let's get on this today. And he gets Congress to pass the Emergency Banking Relief Act, which did a couple of things. First, it broadened the powers of the president, because he realized a strong, active president is going to be what we need to solve the Great Depression. FDR called for a bank holiday, which essentially closed all banks. The closing of the banks allowed for time for banks to organize accounts before reopening and get approval to reopen under new terms and conditions, so that they weren't speculating with people's money and going crazy and just throwing loans at whoever they wanted to. We got to get some regulations in here. The Emergency Banking Relief Act sets a tone for FDR's presidency that is completely the opposite of what Hoover's was. As another part of the relief portion, we have to employ the unemployed. FDR says the number 2 problem after the bank crisis is the high unemployment. So he comes up with a number of programs. We're only going to look at 3 that start to address the issue of employing the unemployed. First, we have the Public Works Administration, abbreviated to the PWA. This is going to be something that we do with the different programs that were created under the New Deal. We're going to abbreviate them. The PWA awards construction contracts for large-scale public work projects, okay? So what we're doing is working on the infrastructure in the United States: bridges, dams, irrigation systems, sewers, roads. And we're going to build up all of these different construction pieces, these public works projects. And who's going to do it? The people who are unemployed. This was meant to provide jobs to skilled employed workers, okay? We want to take those skilled workers who know how to build bridges, dams, irrigation systems, sewers, roads, give them a job and pay them. The goal of this: when people have money, they spend money. What does our economy need to happen? We need people with money in their pocket spending money. And at the same time, we're going to improve the nation's infrastructure. We don't have to have dirt roads anymore. We can have better irrigation, electric systems, okay? Another way we're going to employ the unemployed is the Works Progress Administration, also known as the WPA. This is going to employ nearly 9 million people, giving Americans of all skill levels jobs to match their talents. This is going to go and deal with public works and artistic projects. So the Works Progress Administration is also going to make the United States look a little bit pretty all at the same time, painting murals in cities across the country. So we're employing people at different skill levels now, because we can't just employ skilled workers, we have to employ everybody. Another way that we're going to employ the unemployed as a part of this relief to the Great Depression is the Civilian Conservation Corps. Okay, this is known as the CCC. This is going to look at employing over 2 million unemployed, unmarried men in the ages of 17 to 25. This program is especially unique because it's going after young men and taking them out of the cities, making them leave their homes and going to live in camps on the countryside. So not only are we providing a job, but we're also giving these young men a place to live, a place to work. We're feeding them so that they can take their whole paycheck and send it back home to their families in the cities and get them spending money. These men are going to build reservoirs and bridges, cut fire lanes in forests, plant trees, dig ponds, clear lands for campgrounds. Okay, so we're giving them jobs out in the countryside. And these guys are going to earn money, about $30 per month, and send it home to their families because they're going to be taken care of in the camps that they're living in. The goal here is to remove the youth from the streets in the cities, give them a job, pay their room and board, and pay them. So we're solving the problem of crime in the cities, we're solving the problem of unemployed youth, and we're giving money back into the economy of the cities at the same time, getting these guys to work on the nature of the United States. So all the way around, great idea. So we've just looked at the relief portion of the New Deal, but we still have 2 more R's to solve, and that's going to be our next video. We're going to look at the recovery from the immediate problems, and we'll look at the reform to make sure that we never get into another Great Depression again. Don't forget about your homework, and any questions, let me know.